Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jessica Collins, Executive Director of the Public Health Institute of Western Mass. And I am thrilled that we have these wonderful guests today. Nia Johnson, Western Mass Community Engagement Coordinator from Office of Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell, and Kelly Morgan, Senior Supervising Attorney, the Immigration Law Unit at Central West Justice Center, a subsidiary of Community Legal Aid. We do have a little bit of housekeeping. We will be, obviously, this is being recorded, and the presentation and the recording will be sent out after to everyone who has registered. There will be a Q&A after Nia's presentation, and she and Kelly will be taking on questions and conversations. You can click Show Captions to enable automatically generated closed captioning. And lastly, we will be, in just the last couple of minutes, requesting that you fill out a survey to give us feedback. So with no further ado, I am grateful to turn it over to Nia, and thank you so much, Nia, for presenting on this incredibly important information today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you to the Public Health Institute of Western Mass for having us this afternoon. Hi, everyone. My name is Nia Johnson, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Western Mass Community Engagement Coordinator at the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office. I'm here today with my colleague, Umu Sharif, and also another colleague, Kelly Morgan, who will help facilitate the Q&A session at the end, as Jessica stated. Today, we're going to talk about the unauthorized practice of immigration law. I ask that you save all of your questions to the end because this presentation is being recorded, but the Q&A session will not be recorded. So thank you all for being here with us this afternoon, and we'll get started now. So the Attorney General's Office is an advocate and resource for all residents of Massachusetts, no matter their legal status. And our office is charged with protecting consumers, combating fraud and corruption, investigating and prosecuting crime, and protecting the environment, workers, and civil rights. On screen, you can see our current Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell, who's been in office since January of 2023. And prior to that, Governor Healy, who is now our governor, was our AG for 2 terms. The Massachusetts Attorney General's Office executes our work in 4 major ways. That is investigation. So if you file a complaint, let's say your employer is not paying you minimum wage, you would file a complaint with our office, basically saying that the employer is not paying you minimum wage. Our office would then investigate that complaint. And then we have our second way that our office executes work is enforcement. So enforcement happens in 2 major ways. One way is trial, by taking something that we're enforcing to trial. And then the other is mediating a situation, so bringing both parties to the table to find an agreed upon term. Another way that we execute our work is through policy. So while I do not work for the legislative body, the Attorney General is an elected official, and we do have a policy and government team in our office. And so the Attorney General and our policy and government team do work at the State House to advocate for laws in the best interest of those in the Commonwealth. And then lastly is prevention, which is why I'm here. I'm here to inform you on unauthorized practice of immigration law, so that if you ever find yourself or someone you know that is a victim of the unauthorized practice of immigration law, you know how to find my office or me, and I can help you with additional resources. The Attorney General's office has 4 physical locations throughout the state of Massachusetts that we engage with every city and town. Our 4 physical locations are located in Boston, New Bedford, Worcester, and Springfield. Our Springfield office, which I believe is the closest to many of you on this call, is located at 1441 Main Street on the 12th floor, Springfield, Mass. It's located in the TD Bank building if you're aware of the downtown or familiar with the downtown area in Springfield. Disclaimer, I am not an attorney, so I cannot provide you with any individual legal advice or any legal advice. However, neither can the attorneys in my office, and also neither can Kelly, who is our colleague at the Central West Justice Center. This training today is for informational purposes only, and you will receive this training as a follow-up in that email that Jess will send out. So you will receive all this information at a later time. We will now get into our unauthorized practice of immigration law training. So avoid fraud, work with an attorney. We know that the immigration process can be complicated, and we encourage you to work with a licensed attorney who will help you get it right. If you or someone you know needs help with immigration filings, only an attorney or an accredited representative can give legal advice on immigration matters. You can always ask to see their bar card or proof of accreditation, and a copy of a sample of a bar card is on screen. And we encourage you to avoid notarios. And our notarios are unlicensed people who ask for lots of money to apply for work authorization and a social security card. A licensed attorney or an accredited representative can explain the law and advise you on any options you have. They will give you a written agreement explaining services they will provide and any fees they will charge. They file immigration forms or applications on your behalf, and they represent you in court or before government officials. They also make sure to give updates on your case, including proof your application has been submitted, which is really important. So how do you avoid becoming a victim of fraud? If someone claims to be an attorney, you can always look them up on the Mass BBO. Don't pay for immigration forms. They are free at the USCIS website, and you can download them. They're downloadable. Don't sign any blank forms, and make sure that you understand everything you sign. And if you don't understand, feel comfortable asking questions. Always keep your original personal documents, that's your passports, your birth certificates, and get copies of everything filed on your behalf. And also make sure to get a receipt for all payments issued, and keep record of those receipts, whether it's in a file or a folder. Make sure that you're keeping those records. What are the potential consequences? So as I discussed in the beginning, we understand that the process is complicated, but working with a notario can make things even worse. If you take advice from someone who is not licensed to work on immigration applications, your application for work authorization could be rejected. You could lose money you need for other important things, and it could also hurt your chances of getting legal status or a green card in the future. So how can you find legal help? You can find legal aid services or agencies near you through the MIRA Coalition. And again, all of these links will be shared with you in a follow-up email, as well as this presentation. You can find a qualified lawyer at the ailalawyer.com. And you can verify that anyone you work with is a licensed attorney or an accredited representative at the links below. Any licensed attorney or accredited representative will be found on these websites. So if you're not finding them on these websites, that means that that is a red flag. Reporting to the AGO. We take hate crimes very seriously at the Attorney General's office, and we have a hotline set up to take in any complaints for hate crimes. That hotline number is 800-994-32 28. We also have our general civil rights complaint hotline, as well as our website where you can file civil rights complaints there. And then we also have our fax number. Our hotline for civil rights complaints is 617-963-2917. And then some additional AGO resources that we have for if you have a complaint or if you just have a question and need more information about something, you can contact our consumer hotline, which is 617-727-8400. We have recently launched our immigration resource page, which I believe my colleague Umu is dropping information in the chat about the resource page and how to find it. We also have specific hotlines for Fair Labor Division, which has a responsibility of protecting workers from exploitation by enforcing wage and hour, public construction, and child labor laws. And you can reach them at 617-727-3465. We also have our Civil Rights Division hotline, which enforces and safeguards constitutional and statutory civil rights and liberties on behalf of Massachusetts residents. Again, you can find them at 617-963-2917. Our Healthcare Division enforces healthcare laws to protect the rights of Massachusetts consumers. You can find them at 888-830-6277. And our Insurance and Financial Services Division is charged with performing key consumer protection functions, including securities enforcement, insurance and lending enforcement, insurance rate cases and advocacy, and consumer mediation and advocacy. And they can be reached at 888-830-6277 as well. So that does conclude my presentation, and we will now open the conversation up for questions and answers. Thank you so much. If you have any question, you can feel free to raise your hand, or you can drop your question in the chat and I can read it out loud. At this time, I will stop the recording.